Hi, and welcome to Studio Takes. This time, I could have called this so many different things. Salt and sugar. I finally decided on raspberries and steak. I'll tell you what that's about and how it applies to voiceovers and how it can make you a better voiceover person. Up next. Steak and raspberries today on Studio Takes. What is this all about? Well, I'll be telling you here in just a sec. First, I want to remind you about a couple of things. First of all, please do subscribe, join the party. And we've got these going on all the time, and I try to keep them very interesting, not too long, so you can get through them in, 10 minutes, sometimes a little longer than that, as many as 20, but not real super long. So it's not taking up too much of your day. We'll try to pack the content in and get as much in as we can quickly for you so you can go about the other things that you have in your life and not pad this thing out too much for you. A couple of quick notes here, though. Subscribe, please do. Also, thegigdoctor.com if you would like to get some help with coaching on both voiceover coaching and also assistance in getting your Fiverr gig really cranking and starting to do some serious sales for you. So thegigdoctor.com for more information on that. Also, over at The Gig Doctor, you can get the course 10 Tips to Earn More on Fiverr, and also Gig Winners, which is a voiceover demo course, teaching you how to make your own demo or how to move in the right direction to get a good demo, which can make a big difference in your voiceover career. So just a few things that we can be thinking about today. But right now, I'd like to get right down to it. And I got to tell you that I am someone who does not like plain food. I'm not crazy about really strong food. Example, taco chips. And you can talk to a lot of baby boomers and they'll say the same thing. Chips are so powerfully salted and spiced now that you can barely taste the chip anymore. So when you do that, all of a sudden it's so saturated in your mouth that it's hard to even enjoy the flavor of the chip underneath. It's just all spice, all salt. Almost burns your tongue. There's so much of it. Too much of a good thing, I would say. By the same token, I like a certain amount of seasoning added to food. Most people do. We have a dog, Fidget, the love of our lives. He's a little Cavalier King Charles Spaniel. He doesn't care about salt and sugar and things like that. You toss a piece of meat on the floor. It doesn't have to be seasoned in any special way. It's just plain gone. So that to him, it's no big deal if it doesn't have a certain kind of a flavor to it. But we humans are different. We like to have a little bit of flavor. And when you think about foods like the ones we're talking about today, steak and raspberries, steak by itself, just with no seasoning at all, just coming out of a pan or whatever, it's good. And I mean, if it's been grilled, so it's got a little of that grilled flavor. But then again, that's flavor being added to it, isn't it? So just by itself, I mean, meat is a little bit plain. We're just used to wanting to kind of dress it up, doll it up a little bit. Oh, I almost forgot. I've got a almost too good to be true looking picture here. Doesn't that look great? But the thing about steak and raspberries is that they aren't terribly good just by themselves. Now, some people, big raspberry fans, would say, I don't need anything added to raspberries to enjoy them. And I kind of get that. But I've discovered that to me, raspberries lack a little something. Maybe they just don't have as much natural sugar in them or something like that. But when you sprinkle a little sugar on them, they just light up. If you put a little salt, a little pepper on the steak, it's amazing how much just salt does for things like steak. Why is that? Well, I couldn't describe it scientifically for you, but I can say that the experience is kind of like a magnifying glass. If you're not over-salting so that the salt becomes the predominant flavor, it's almost as if you were holding a magnifying glass over your taste buds when you're eating the steak. And when you put sugar on raspberries, again, it's like you're putting a magnifying glass over the raspberries. It doesn't completely mask the raspberry flavor. Somehow it enhances it. It actually makes it more pungent. It gives it more flavor. That's why I think jams are so good, because they take that natural fruit flavor and they somehow magnify it, and it makes it really, really tasty. The reason I bring all of this up and how it applies to voiceovers is it actually harkens back to a coaching session I did this week with a lovely lady named Angela. Angela, if you're watching this, I hope you don't mind my mentioning your name. But she's got a great attitude, and she asks great questions. She also has real talent, and she's going to come right along. She's going to do good, especially in certain areas of voiceover in the softer delivery styles. That's her thing. That's the pocket. That's her pocket. That's where she that's her wheelhouse, as they say. She's going to do great in that area. But we were discussing, okay, how much of yourself should come out in voiceovers? And this is something that I hammer, preach in coaching sessions is don't sound like you're reading. Try to get away from that deliberate sound of where you're breaking the words into pieces and you're saying it kind of like if you were reading. Instead, when you and I talk, we talk in fits and starts. We say things a little bit and then we slow down. Maybe we go really fast across a couple of things like I just did, across a couple of things. And then maybe we slow way down when we're stopping and thinking about something or when we're really making a point. So there's a little bit of both. And this is natural. This is us. This is the way people really talk. And this is what will sound the most convincing when you're doing a narration, a voiceover, is if you can kind of get into that pocket, into that zone of speaking the way you do when you're sitting across the table from someone, leaning toward them, maybe confiding something with them across the table. Suddenly your voice just kind of goes into a certain place and your speed will increase and decrease and it will just have a certain kind of a flavor to it. Now, I don't want to go too far into the flavor right now because mainly what we're talking about so far is what you and I are without seasoning. It's just what's natural. So if we grab a handful of raspberries, we grow raspberries on the bank, and we live on the river here, and we didn't have enough room in our garden, so we just planted some on the bank. And so we scramble down on the bank and we pick raspberries and we come up with bowls of raspberries. And, we have them on our cereal or we have them in a dish with milk and a little sugar. But raspberries, as I said, by themselves, they have a nice native flavor that's unique, but it is a little on the bland side for me. Okay. We, in our normal conversation, have a really nice, basic, natural flavor, and it comes from our personality. When we're doing a voiceover, it might be a little bit raspberry. So while the inflection and the pacing and some of those things are basically, if we're doing like just ourselves naturally, that will get us a long way toward a good finished product. But for the sake of those who are consuming this, it's good if we can add just a little bit of seasoning. The seasoning does not have to be strong. And one of the big problems I think one of the big mistakes people make is when they put so much spice into their voiceover that it ends up like those taco chips that burn your tongue. That you can no longer even taste the personality of the person behind them anymore, and it just becomes all effect, all emphasis, all emotion, without the humanity. So just as we would add salt to steak or sugar to raspberries in order to just give them that little extra zing, we need to do the same thing with our voiceovers. So we're not going to be exactly ourselves. We're going to be as close as we can be to ourselves without it starting to get a little too bland and just sitting across the table talking conversationally. So we need to just turn up the jams just a little bit and give it a little sugar, a little salt. And what I'm referring to here is just a little additional energy, a little additional animation to the inflection, maybe a little extra inflection, a little additional emphasis, maybe a little more of a dramatic pause here and there, while maintaining a real human feel to the thing. So what we give them is an oral meal that has a deliciousness to it, if that makes sense. And the expression deliciousness is something that you'll hear me talk about in more than just this particular get-together. The whole subject of a delicious voice is something I'd like to talk about in much more detail in a future session. So stay tuned on that one. But just remember, a little salt, a little sugar, but a lot of the real thing underneath. Hope this has been helpful to you. Be sure to subscribe to the channel here. Join me for the next studio take. Have a great day.
You give me a call.
Hello.
Hello? Hello, I think.
Hello, cutie pie.
Until I heard the voice, I'd never done a crazy thing in my whole life.
Goodbye.